Hello ladies, MBs and gentlemen. In December I committed myself, as in previous years, to uploading a YouTube video for every day of Advent. On one day I was a bit stuck for ideas, so I made the foolish mistake of trying to get a sensible conversation out of the YouTube atheist community. What I was hoping for in response was a video of maybe between 5 and 10 minutes detailing the pros and cons of YouTube atheism and reaching some sort of conclusion as to its achievements, if any. I forgot, however, that Noel Plum exists, and that on average his videos tend to be about 20 fucking minutes long, which I wouldn't mind so much given as my name isn't Sargon and I am capable of sitting still for more than 5 minutes without fidgeting. But I'm of the belief that if a video is going to be that long, it should at least contain enough information to actually warrant being that long. But Noel Plum really outdid himself, giving me 2 response videos, one of which had absolutely nothing to do with the subject of my video, and the other which only vaguely had something to do with said subject, though it failed by assuming my question was nothing more than rhetoric. I'm going to try and respond to Noel Plum's videos as best I can, but it's likely going to take more than one video. Note to self, do not bother trying to get a sensible conversation out of the YouTube atheist community again. The first thing I want to address from Noel Plum's videos is the subject of gradualism. If you're wondering what that has to do with atheism, the answer is pretty much nothing, and it compels me to reiterate, note to self, do not bother trying to get a sensible conversation out of the YouTube atheist community again. So, gradualism amazes all Noel Plum.
But I'm a gradualist, and I see very much merit in a gradualistic approach to social change that happens at a pace where you can get people on board as much as possible rather than twisting their arms, and a pace that takes place organically in many ways. You set the seeds, you make the arguments, and then you allow society to change. And that kind of progressivism, from my perspective, seem to be doing very well. Now, I know somebody like Andy might say, yes, from your perspective, society's fine because it's all centred around you. That isn't what I mean. I don't mean with regards to things that benefit me. I mean in many ways things that don't benefit me. Things such as, in my lifetime, Andy, in fact, not in my lifetime. We're not even talking my lifetime because I'm only halfway through my lifetime. So in half a lifetime, the changes that I've seen with regard to attitudes towards homosexuality in the United Kingdom, towards attitudes to do with race in the United Kingdom, are mind-shatteringly different, how these things have changed. And if I think back to things that I'd watch and things that I'd hear and attitudes that were commonplace when I was a child, it is revolutionarily different now to what it was then. I can also say with regard to sex and gender and how we view women, for example, in the workplace, in one generation, my wife's mother, same with my mother, both left work when they had children and became a housewife because that is what happened then. Within one generation, my wife, now we've had a child, there was never any question of her leaving work. That was never even a consideration. The assumption is that she would stay working and stay working in a more prestigious job than I have. Right now, the chances of that being the scenario back at the time when just going back one generation is very, very small. How different the change in situation and how different the change in perceptions just within one generation. And I regard those as quite organic and gradualistic changes that have taken place, and yet still at a very, very rapid rate if you compare the kind of social change that has often taken place in societies in the past, often which has taken many, many generations and sometimes centuries for social changes to work through. But seemingly that isn't been good enough for some people, and the drum beat started some time ago. And if you could set that drum beat to some kind of, I don't know, like some union placard, Andy, I'm sure you've been on a few picket lines in your time, I've been on a couple as well, it would say something like, what do we want? Everything. When do we want it? Now. Something along those lines. And I first came across this with regard to the fabled, now it's kind of YouTube legend in these parts, Free Thought Blogs, Atheism Plus, fiasco. You know, I've heard you say several times now that one of the things that YouTube is this right-wing cesspool. This is what you say, and that this is very right-wing, all the sort of areas of YouTube that we're involved in. I can tell you that you wouldn't have said that back in 2008, 2010. You wouldn't have said that, you know. It was odd. When I started in 2008, I sat there as Mr. Boring Bastard, middle-of-the-road centrist, and nearly everybody that I knew on YouTube was to the left of me. Or that's how it appeared to me, that my politics was to the right of the vast majority of people that were involved in the YouTube circles that I was involved in. Not by a long way, most of them, but to the left of me. And I agree partly with what you say. It does seem to have shifted a great deal to the right. I feel now as if I'm like kind of slap bang in the middle now. Perhaps sometimes to the left of the political centre. So what has caused that? What has affected that change, Andy? And when did it take place? Well, it seems to have coincided very, very much with this very, very aggressive, hardline new progressivism that seems to have abandoned trying to convince people and instead has decided to condemn people. And when has that path ever worked out well, Andy? You just tell me that. I mean, look, sure, if what you want to do is you want to play to the crowd, you just want to preach to the converted or just show off your credentials about what a great person you are, then that's great. But the problem is that you're not going to convert anyone. You're not going to convince anybody by condemning them. All you're ever going to do is harden their hearts. And I know that we had a bit of a discussion on Facebook and you threw this one back at me. And I'll give you the response now that I gave on there for the benefit of everybody else, which is it's fine. You can harden the hearts of a few. If you want to go after Stormfront, you can say what you like about them. I likened it to Christianity and atheism in the United States. If you want to say something that criticizes heavily all the atheists in the United States, you can get away with that trick because there's only about 10% of the population. But if you want to do the same thing and it's going to involve criticizing Christians, you're not really going to get very far because that's like 80 or 90% of the population that you're going to be criticizing there. You're not going to bring them on board. You're going to have to box a little bit more clever, I would suggest there, Andy. And this is the problem. It's that the condemnation has incorporated nearly everybody. And what has it resulted in? It's resulted in some of the most bizarre things I've ever seen. It's resulted in people talking fondly about Donald Trump that I wouldn't expect to do so in a million fucking years. People whose politics, when I listen to them in the round, seems to the left of me, who are prepared to put their flag alongside somebody such as Donald Trump. That is absolutely wild. That is bizarre, right? And if you're telling me that new progressivism isn't responsible for that, I'd like you to tell me what is. Because all these changes that I've seen on YouTube just seem to coincide with this new, very, very much hardline approach that has taken place.
Okay, so I think we can vaguely summarise Noel Plum's argument as being that social progress is good, but it has to happen slowly and organically, otherwise people who would otherwise support it will get pissed off and vote for Donald Trump, or such similar. Something I need to get off my chest here is that if there's one thing more grotesquely irresponsible than voting for Donald Trump, it's blaming someone else for the fact that you voted for Donald Trump. Let's be blunt. If someone who claims to be progressive ends up voting for Donald Trump because some SJW type person offended them by calling them a racist or a sexist or whatever else, then what that says to me is that this particular someone was never particularly serious about supporting social progress in the first place. As such, I don't think hardline progressive activism pushes these people towards voting for Trump. Rather, I think it simply shows them in their true colours. The fact that a lot of these people self-identify as liberals should be something of a clue. I've quoted Assata Shakur before, I'll quote her again. I have never really understood exactly what a liberal is, since I have heard liberals express every conceivable opinion on every conceivable subject. As far as I can tell, you have the extreme right, who are fascist, racist, capitalist dogs like Ronald Reagan, who come right out and let you know where they're coming from. And on the opposite end, you have the left, who are supposed to be committed to justice, equality and human rights. And somewhere between those 2 points is the liberal. As far as I'm concerned, liberal is the most meaningless word in the dictionary. History has shown me that as long as some white middle-class people can live high on the hog, take vacations to Europe, send their children to private schools, and reap the benefits of their white skin privilege, then they are liberal. But when times get hard and money gets tight, they pull off that liberal mask and you think you're talking to Adolf Hitler. They feel sorry for the so-called underprivileged just so long as they can maintain their own privileges. When you look at recent events, you realise that's pretty much what's happened. For many, the liberal mask has come off. Check out this comment, for example. Note that with this person, their reasons for unmasking are entirely selfish. I am sick of the PC culture on the left. I'm sick of being told I have privilege just because I am white. I'm sick of being accused of racism just because I don't support Black Lives Matter and am pro-cop, etc, etc, etc. The recurring word is I. This person hasn't been motivated by social concerns, rather they've been motivated by their own personal sensibilities. Just how thin-skinned does an individual have to be to take the simple statement that they have white privilege as some sort of insult? If this is seriously all it takes to convert someone who supposedly supports human rights and social progress into someone who will happily vote for a fascist, then, like I said, it confirms what Shakur said. When times get hard and money gets tight, they pull off that liberal mask and you think you're talking to Adolf Hitler. They feel sorry for the so-called underprivileged just as long as they can maintain their own privileges. I am not about to have Noel Plum palm this nonsense off onto me. Like Shakur, Martin Luther King was not a fan of gradualism either. In his most famous speech, he described gradualism as a tranquilising drug. His letter from a Birmingham jail, which I have also quoted before, also bears repeating here. I must confess that over the past few years I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in his stride toward freedom is not the white citizens' councillor or the Ku Klux Klanner, but the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action, who paternalistically believes he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by a mythical concept of time and who constantly advises the Negro to wait for a more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection. One of the reasons I've chosen to quote these people is because their very existence shows Noel Plum's ignorance of the history of social activism. Noel Plum asserts that progressivism used to be this much more agreeable, soft-touch movement that got everything done through rational discussion, and that this hardline approach to progressivism is some sort of new thing. Shakur and King was certainly not soft-touch progressives. It's also very important to address Noel Plum's argument about change happening organically. I'm reminded of a scene from the Johnny Cash biopic, Walk the Line, where Johnny Cash says to June Carter, June, that stuff will just work itself out. And June Carter replies, no, it does not work itself out, people work it out for you and you think it works itself out. This is very much the mentality I sense behind Noel Plum's belief in organic social change. Because he isn't the one actually putting the effort in to bring this change about, he assumes that it must be just bringing itself about. People have worked very hard over the decades to bring about social change, and they did not employ the soft-touch approach that Noel Plum seems to think they did. Hardline progressive activism has existed for a very long time, and it has worked. Notably, opponents to hardline progressive activism have existed for a very long time as well, and they have been shown to be wrong. If social justice activists were to stop challenging privilege, as Noel Plum would have them do, and instead submit to it, i.e. start asking nicely for better treatment instead of demanding equal treatment, all else being equal, that would defeat the whole point of social justice activism. Further, it would no longer be social justice activism because it would be submitting to the very hierarchies that embody social injustice. One area where even Noel Plum would surely have to admit that gradualism has been disastrous is that of tackling climate change. By taking a gradualistic approach to climate change and ridiculing those who have sought to tackle the issue seriously as hippies and bean counters, we as a society have allowed the issue to become such a problem that we are now at such a stage where drastic measures are literally our only option. Back to the subject of social justice, though, I do find myself wondering if Noel Plum was suddenly one day to find he legally no longer had autonomy over his own body, and or were to find himself not allowed freedom of movement, and or were told he had to move back to the back of the bus, and or wasn't allowed to legally marry his significant other, and or constantly found himself being misgendered, etc., etc., etc. How gradualist would he be? Would he just shrug his shoulders and say to himself, well, in 100 years or so this will all have sorted itself out, I'll just put up with it? Somehow I doubt it. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll be uploading my next response to Noel Plum entitled, Won't Somebody Please Think of the Homophobes, pretty soon.